Hey guys, I want to start with a story. I want you to imagine this couple. They're a young couple and they decide to move to a hilltop, kind of like the hilltops that we've spoken about before. No water, no electricity, literally top of a mountain with crazy winds. It's just them and a caravan. And before they even unpack properly, they paint the door turquoise. Their neighbors paint their door green and they put out flowers and they even set the Friday night Shabbat table just to prepare for the next day. Almost like they're saying, if we're going to live here, this is going to feel like a home no matter what. Now, that first night, it's anything but romantic. It's tense, it's vulnerable, and some crazy things happen. And yet, by the morning, something changes, something shifts that literally changes the story completely. Now, I won't spoil it because this shift is key to understanding today's guest. Eliana Passentinis grew up surfing in California. She totally resisted ever learning Hebrew, and she definitely did not in her wildest dreams think that she would land up on a hilltop in Binyamin, but she is. And she is a fascinating person. And yet today, she's one of the most recognizable faces representing the region of Binyamin. She's met with senators and congressmen and diplomats, and she's hosted thousands in her house. In fact, I would say she spends most of her time en route between Binyamin, her hilltop, and Washington, D.C. Now, while you're listening to this interview, I want you to keep one question in mind. I want to ask, like we always do. So, what do you think changes people more? Argument or encounter? Now, I know you're probably like, Franny, this is very easy. It's not really. Like, I'm not talking about argument in a way that's like mean and brutal, or like, I'm talking about debate, good, clear debate. Like, you see all these TV shows now, like, I don't know, of debates, of like political debates, like an actual good argument. Does that change people's minds more, or encountering people? We're going to hold on to that a little bit because if you listen closely, Eliana's story suggests that the battleground for this region is actually maybe not where we think it is or where we think it should be. We're going to come back to that idea at the end. And of course, we're going to bring in the Tanakh and a deeper lens. And maybe we'll have an idea of something really beautiful about this region that I don't think I've ever said on this podcast before. So stay tuned. I'll see you on the other side. Enjoy this fascinating interview. Welcome, Eliana Passentinis, to Live the Land podcast. I'm so excited that you're with us all the way from Eli. You are a very well-known face and name in the Binyamin area. We're still talking about Judea and Samaria, but Binyamin is north of Jerusalem. But you were not born there. You came from outside of Israel and moved there. How did you get to where you are? What's your story? Like, can you take us back to the idea of building your life on the top of a hill in the Binyamin region?
Sure, I'm happy to share that story. I'm originally from San Francisco, from the Bay Area, and I loved my childhood. I just loved living in California, living in San Francisco. And one day my parents said, we're making Aliyah. I was 10 years old, and I didn't really feel any connection to Israel. I was not happy about it. I actually went kicking and screaming to the airport. And when we got to Israel, we moved to Herzliya Pituach. And I was so upset with my parents for moving to Israel, and I wouldn't learn Hebrew. And I befriended all the kids on the street. And in Herzliya Pituach, they were all children that worked for ambassadors from all over the world. And they all spoke English. So we moved to Israel. All my friends are Goyim, non-Jewish kids speaking English. It took
Like
me
expats.
it took me a really long time to climb down that tree. When I was 16, we lived really right by the beach, and I used to surf. And there was this really cute guy from down the street that used to come borrow my surfboard. And my grandmother was visiting. She
You
said,
surf,
"Hey,
Eliana.
yeah,
I'm sorry. I also surf. And now I'm just going to like put a little asterisk. We need to go surf together. Continue.
okay, I can't surf anymore, but I did for years." And so this guy down the street used to come borrow my surfboard, and my grandmother, who was visiting, said, he's starting up with you. And I said, no, he just wants a surfboard. So she was right. We got married. And just before we were married, I was in the army, and he came to Eli, to the preparatory Mechina, the yeshivat Bnei David. The preparatory yeshivas were new then. This is over 30 years ago. And he calls me up. He says, there's something new that we don't know anything about. His family's from Paris. They made Aliyah to Herzliya Pituach. We knew Herzliya, Tel Aviv, the clubs in Tel Aviv, and get on a plane and go travel somewhere. We didn't know anything about Judea and Samaria or anything in this region. And I came with him on an alumni Shabbat, and I look at all these women with their head cut, looking like I'm looking today, thinking I'm never going to look like that. I came with my really nice coat that I bought in New York and my high heels, and I sunk in the mud. And I looked at the rabbi's wife, and she was pregnant with her 11th child, and I was freezing in my New York, very stylish coat. It wasn't for the Shomron Mountains. And I look at this woman who's pregnant with a really, really, she had like one of those down coats, not stylish at all, but very warm. And she had this light in her eyes. And I said, this is what I want to become. This is who I want to be. And they had just established, like a week before, the first hilltop in Judea and Samaria. There were 4 caravans on the hilltop. 3 had families in them. The 4th was empty. There was a generator outside and a water tank. There was no running water, no electricity. And we climbed up there. It was 4 kilometers outside of the issue. And I said to my husband, if we want to move all the way out here and change our lifestyle totally, then we're going to establish this hilltop with these families. And so we were like the first outside the walls of the city, outside the issue. And our parents thought we were absolutely crazy, but then they fell in love with what we were doing. And it was really a feeling of doing something first and important.
Wow.
So that's how we came to Eli.
Wow. And now that hilltop is much bigger and developed and has really, if you come visit that hilltop, are you in Tet?
No, we've moved from then. That was the first hilltop we established. It's called Givah because they didn't even have names for the hilltops. They had letters. And Eli today is 1,000 families. Yeah. And we moved to hilltop number 9. We established this hilltop with one other family. And here we really had no electricity and no running water for a very long time. Now we have no Wi-Fi. People say that's worse, but everybody has their own their challenges.
If you had to choose in water or Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So today people say I could do water, but that one. So we established this hilltop almost 28 years ago. We lived here alone with one other family, and we were told to come early in the morning, just in case the press would come. It was a Friday, and we painted the door turquoise. Our neighbors painted it green, and we brought flowers, and we brought our cholent, we brought our Shabbat food and our refrigerator, and made it look like we'd been here for years. But that Friday night, all the Arabs from the neighboring village came to welcome us, and it was just 2 families and a guard who was in his 70s who locked himself in the next caravan next to us and didn't want to get out. So thank God, the Arabs just came up and they burnt tires and they just wanted to show us that they're here. And the next morning,
it's still very terrifying.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I slept with my shoes on that night, thinking this is probably my last night. I was 9 months pregnant with my second child. We had a 1.5-year-old. And my husband wakes me up the next morning. He says, you have to come see this. And we look out, you imagine we're on top of a hill. Today, I'm always happy to invite people over and say that in the morning we can see Jordan, which just beneath Jordan is the river. And to the west, we can see the sea, the Mediterranean, Tel Aviv. We have this gorgeous view of the town of Eli. And all of a sudden I look, rubbing my eyes, and I see like 100 men wearing white shirts. It's Shabbat, the Sabbath, and they're walking up the mountain. Because you're supposed to read the Torah. You're especially supposed to read the Torah on that specific Shabbat to remember what the Amalekites did to us. And we needed a minyan, and we needed 10 men. And so all these men walked up especially to say a special prayer when you establish a new town in Israel, a new yeshuv. And so it was very, very, it was an unforgettable experience. It was really, really spectacular. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. We were talking about in our last episode about these like hilltop people who just live by themselves with no water and electricity. Like what leads you to do that?
Like today, why? I have so much admiration for the young couples that live on these farms.
But you were that.
No, but they were even more remote. Look, we were remote and had no connection. Like people didn't even have cell phones then, let alone internet. Like that you were really on your own. There were no cameras, no security cameras. But the young families today living with their children in the middle of nowhere. We were a hilltop community, and we were 4 kilometers from the nucleus of the town of Ely. But the town of Ely had our backs. It's not the same as
Mm,
today. So
I
I'm
hear
full of
you. I
admiration,
still,
and I love the farms. I think it's really, but it is, my older kids had no friends. They were just with one other neighbor for a while, and then 2 neighbors. And they decided they want to go to the youth group on Shabbat. They would walk down, an hour to get down to see people on Shabbat.
and then get back up. They have
And,
to hike up a
you know, we,
mountain to get
and
back
we
home.
drive them. We drive them everywhere. But when I ask them today, today my older children are married. And they say they do it right all over again. And they're looking to raise their children in these remote and special places.
So when people hear about this region, in fact, maybe you can define it for us, because we've all heard, especially on this podcast, Yehuda and Shimon, Judea and Samaria. What is Binyamin? Tell us about it. What is that? What is that entity? You are, by the way, you sit at the foreign desk, international
Right.
affairs. You've met diplomats. Like, what is Binyamin?
So Binyamin is the largest regional council in Israel, and it borders Jerusalem. We have a beach on the Dead Sea, goes all the way to Park Canada on Highway 1 and down towards Ariel. So it's huge. It's 1 million dunams, which is very, very big. Population of almost 90,000,
Wow.
50. It's actually, I've stopped counting how many towns and communities we have, but we have about 50 official towns, and there are many, many more farms and smaller communities. And so Binyamin is named for the tribal inheritance of Benjamin, which is the majority of the municipality. But it's also, if you're dividing Judea and Samaria into Judea and Samaria with Jerusalem in the middle, so this would be part of, geographically would be part of Samaria. But that whole
Right.
area is divided into municipalities. So in our jurisdiction, there are 250,000 Israelis that live here. Because Beit El is in that region. And so our governor, who governs the region, Israel Gantz, has the responsibility for the roads and for the infrastructure of the entire region, but only 90,000 of the people here do vote for him for the election. So, but
Right.
everywhere you travel here, first of all, I mean, I know I live here and I work for the regional council, but I absolutely love living here. I've lived here for 30 years. We have 8 children and 4 grandchildren. And I love the nature. I love the views. I love the people, the community. Everywhere you drive here, Franny, you'll see the wool everywhere. And that's the symbol of the
Mm-hmm.
Shevet, of the tribe of Binyamin. And if you're hiking, you're going to see the wolf on wheels because that's the bike path. And then there's a Jeep
Right.
path with a different type of wheel. And at the entrance to every yeshuv, you're going to see the wolf. And when I walk in the office in the morning, I see this big, beautiful gold wolf. And wolves are always in packs, and you'll
Yeah.
never see a wolf alone. And those packs are community, and we're a very, very strong community. People ask me why I love or why I moved here. So I moved here because of the ideology. Our parents moved from Paris and San Francisco to Herzliya. We left our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, and everyone, and all we did is move an hour up the highway. But we felt like we were doing something for the state of Israel. And we wanted to feel like we're doing something good. Today, I'm asked many times about the new modern settlers, which I don't like that
Yeah.
term, but the people that come here today, in my opinion, to all of Judea and Samaria, but especially to Binyamin, they come because of the quality of life. Now, the quality of life is not cheap housing. The homes here are very
No.
expensive. They come
Yeah.
for the community. They come because it's like the 60s in the States where you can leave your bicycle out. Nobody's going to steal it. It'll be returned to your doorstep if you left it somewhere. I feel that I would have never been able to raise such a large family if I didn't have this community and these wonderful people. We've had many hardships in my tiny little neighborhood. Today we're 60 families, we started with only 2. We lost 5 of our very, very close friends. Avi and
I'm so
Abital
sorry.
Bolansky in a terror attack in the Second Intifada. And when they were murdered as a couple, she was pregnant, 2 kids in the car. Their baby had like 20 bullet holes in his car seat, but he was, Baruch Hashem, fine. And the 3-year-old was wounded
Wow.
badly. Both married today. These kids are married. We helped raise them. I did their bar mitzvahs with them. Like we were part of that family. We didn't want to let our friends go. But what happened was everyone here was so devastated. We were young families living in this hilltop community with Intifada. There were infiltrations of terrorists to the Yishuvim. They were shot like from close range on the highway, and people just got up and left. And
Yeah.
a small, just a few families, we decided to stay in their memory and to build our permanent homes. And
Wow.
a few years later, the Second Lebanon War, Roe Klein was killed.
Yeah.
Um, he's famous because he threw himself on the grenade, and his last words were Shema Israel. Survived by his
Yeah.
wife and his 2 sons. She remarried. They live here. And then we lost Eli Raz Peretz. You probably know Miriam Peretz, who
Yeah.
lost 2 sons. And just
Yeah.
in this last war, Amishar Ben David, who was our very close friend, father of 5, lives right across the street from me. These 3
Wow.
families live right next to each other in a
They're all right
very,
next to
very
each other.
small,
Yeah.
yeah, and tight-knit community. So we've become very, very close, our neighborhood, our community.
Unfortunately, sometimes those really, really hard losses and the pain really does bring us to a different space of connectivity. May we never have any more. May
Amen.
we never see more. So I want to actually like talk about this daily life for a second. What surprised you most about life in that region?
So there have been so many changes from the time we were camping or glamping or whatever. We came
Glamping.
here. Yeah, we were also in Rechelim for a few months. They needed a family to move into it wasn't even a home. We wore boots against the mud and the puddles in the house. I mean, it wasn't even, it was like a tent. I don't know what it was. But what surprised me most is I think the fact that everybody here really cares about each other. Where I live there's no, as we say in Hebrew, lashon hara. Nobody says anything bad about the next person, and everybody's looking for a purpose in life, and the purpose is the most important. And what surprises me that when people come and look at us, they call us the settlers living in the West Bank, stealing land, and the difference between the way we're portrayed in the international media and the people that come and ask me questions compared to the wonderful people living here who are idealists
Yeah.
and wonderful, kind people, it's such a big difference. Another thing that surprised me was when I figured out who the settlers were, they all kind of look like what I look like today or what you look like. But it turns out that almost a third of Judea and Samaria, and I'm driving and meeting and seeing people are Haredi, ultra-Orthodox, and another third, and especially in my town in Eli, non-religious at all, people driving on Shabbat. I thought like all the settlers are
One
religious.
thing. Or
Yeah.
one thing. It's very, very diverse.
No, I
Absolutely.
think that was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah. Okay. So you are living in the heartland of the Tanakh. This
Mhm.
is literally like you drive from Jerusalem to your home and you're passing by. You don't even need a map. You just open up the scripture and you can literally just read about every place on all the sides of the roads to get to where you live, right? You have like Beit El and the Ai and Givon and Michmash and Shiloh. Is there a specific site? First of all, what does it feel like to live in the land of the Tanakh? And also, is there a specific site or something that you're connected to that you feel inspired by? That's something that is dear to your heart.
Yeah. So first of all, it's very exciting to be driving through the verses of the Bible. It's really, really, it's amazing when you drive and just looking at the signs. This is Beitel, and this. If I turn over here, and I know that this stone structure belongs to this period of time. Anyone who knows me knows that answer, and the answer is Shiloh. When I moved here, I didn't really feel a strong connection to this region. When I was in the army, I was a tour guide for the Site of Protection of Nature in the Jerusalem Hills, and we'd give tours in the Jerusalem Hills and then the Judean Desert and in Jerusalem. And I felt a very strong connection to that area. And this area seemed very, very bare and rocky, and it took me a while to connect. And I didn't even
Mm.
really learn that much about the area. I would always go back to give tours in Jerusalem and that region. And then I said, I have to start learning a little bit about Shiloh. It's like right beneath my home. And then we moved over to established this hilltop, and we came here because it's close to Shiloh, and Eli is named for Shiloh. And we felt such a strong connection that after 10 years in a caravan and a trailer, when it was time to build our permanent home, we decided that we want to have that connection. My sister-in-law is our architect, And she said, after 10 years in a caravan, you probably want a beautiful home with nice tiles and a nice kitchen. I said, there's one thing that's important to me, that our children grow up understanding and appreciating the privilege they have of living in the biblical heartland. And I want to have that connection. And I want that to be the architecture. And when you drive around here, Franny, I'm sure you've noticed that most of the homes here either have the same architect or the same style,
Yep.
red tile
It's
roofs,
kind of like a copy paste.
stone.
Yeah.
It's not, that's for Europe. When you have snow, that's why you
Yeah.
have this kind of a roof, right? So in the Tanakh,
Yeah.
they had different style homes. And in Shiloh, they found the typical home from the time of Joshua, the 4-room home. And so
Yep.
we used that blueprint to build our house. So from a bird's eye view, our home, along with our neighbor's house, looks exactly like the 4-room home. With the courtyard and everything. It looks on the outside. On the inside, we have a few differences. We have underfloor heating. I don't think Joshua did, and running water. But the
Definitely
idea
not.
was to connect to the past. But what's really fascinating, and you'll appreciate this because you have so much knowledge and you've been everywhere in Israel, and I'm sure you've been on excavations. When we started the
Absolutely.
infrastructure for our home, we found hundreds of pottery shards. And I had a feeling when they were, I knew when they were from, but I was studying for my master's in Land of Israel Studies at Bar Ilan. And there's this one course in archaeology that I missed, and it's the pottery reading. So I wasn't positive, and I wanted my archaeology professor to give me that final okay. So I took a pillowcase, stuffed it with pottery shards, drove to Bar Ilan University. And after class, I said to my professor, can you help me date the pieces of pottery? So he says, yeah, sure. He thought I'd give him like 2-3 pieces. And he rolls his eyes kind of, I pour it on his table, all this pillowcase full of pottery.
He's
And
like,
he
did
says,
you
are
loot
these
an archaeological site?
exactly? He said, are you crazy? This is illegal. And he's looking around. I said, "That's from my backyard." He said, your backyard? Where do you live? He said, I live in Eli, named for Eli HaKohen, Eli the high priest, overlooking the place of the Mishkan, the place of the tabernacle in Shiloh, and what's called in Hebrew Bechol Havoeh, as far as the eye can see. If we go back to the time of the Mishkan, 369 years, this was Israel's first capital. 369 years, the tabernacle stood in Shiloh. And it says in the Talmud that different from Jerusalem, after you stand in line and offer your sacrifice, you can eat the holy sacrifice as far as the eye
Anywhere
can
you
see,
can
as
see
long
it.
as you have
Yeah.
eye contact. So if you're
Visual.
familiar with the site of Shiloh, you look around and there are many mountains that surround Shiloh, and archaeologists found piles and piles of pottery on every one of these hilltops from the exact
Yeah.
spot where you can see the Mishkan. I always tell people that come to our home that this is where they invented the disposable dishes. Because as soon as they finish eating the holy sacrifice, pottery is porous, therefore absorbs the kedusha, the holiness of the sacrifice, and cannot be reused. So the Jewish families that lived here thousands of years ago would break those bowls, would break those plates, and we have pieces of pottery, broken dishes from Jewish families from 3,000, 300, 400, 500 years ago all over our backyard.
That's
And we plan
incredible.
our dining room table. We have these big windows. When you look straight outside from the dining room table, you can see Shiloh. We kindly ask our guests not to break the dishes after the meal. They can clear them or wash them. But we have that special connection. And
It's incredible.
that's one reason Shiloh is so important to me. And the second is the story of Hannah's prayer. And there's so many miracles that happen here. We could do a whole podcast just about the miracles and the modern day Hannah and the people that come from all over the world. And it really, really is special. And that's what pointed me in the direction of diplomacy and working in Washington. I would host any delegation that would come in, just as a mother living here, and they needed a local tour guide to just like drive down and spend an hour and a half in Shiloh. I didn't have time. The congressman didn't have time. So we were a great match. I even had a member of Congress come with me to pick up my kids from Gon and then come to lunch because he said, can I come into the kindergarten with you? And every time I see him in the halls in Congress, he says, I was at your house. How are those kids doing?
So
and
funny.
So what happened was the members of Congress that would come, they were really fascinated by Shiloh. And when I started traveling to Washington, they recognized me because they said, you're from Shiloh. We were in Shiloh. And because it touched their hearts, that's what connected me. I always say from Israel's first capital to the capital of the United States of America.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. You're like your house is literally a living, breathing continuation of the story. Of course, it's something that would be connected to you. So
I'll tell you something else about the connection between the Tanakh and the diplomacy in our home. We can talk about advocating or hasbara, or how, a mother of 8 who's home with her kids starts traveling to Washington. And what do I have to
I'm
say?
very curious about that.
But I'll tell you, I'll share 2 quick stories with you. First of all, how we began to even explain. I don't like the word hasbara, and I don't really like advocating, but I like to share stories. So how did I begin with sharing stories about my life and about our life as Jews living in Judea and Samaria? I was 21 years old, and we moved to that first hilltop, hill number 5 in Eli. And we were the 4th family in the 4th caravan. And the first 3 were
Yeah.
families who had homes down in the Yishuv, down in the town. And they were asked to be brave and to come up and spend at least their
Like a
days.
night.
Right.
Wow.
At
They're like
least-
coming up and then they're like, bye guys, we're going back down to our other regular homes.
Exactly. And then when we came from nowhere. So they said, hey, if you're coming, we're going to charge you rent. Okay, now imagine, Franny, the middle of absolute nowhere. Again, there's nothing but a roof over your head because the water's outside,
Yeah.
the generator breaks down. So they decided, they had a committee meeting, and they decided to charge us 150 shekels a month. So we had just finished our army service, and you get some kind of grants from the army if you prove that you're paying your rent. So we go to Bank Discount in
Okay.
Herzliya Pituach, which is a really nice neighborhood, and we bring our papers. And just as we're signing, they come out and they say, wait a minute, there's a mistake here. It's not 150 shekels. It's $150, isn't it? We said, no, it's 150 shekels. They said, where's Ali, what is that? So 21 years old,
Like,
I
where do
take
we
out,
get cheap rent?
exactly. I take out a map and I tell them that we live in Eli, and it's a hilltop in Eli and Shiloh. And that's when we started understanding that what we take for granted needs to be explained. You have to take out a map. You have to share your story. And what happened was, when we moved from that caravan to our permanent home, and I was trying to figure out if we're going to clean it ourselves or we're going to bring a cleaning company, we had a court. Peace Now took us to court. They didn't even take us to court. They took the Binyamin Regional Council and the
Oh,
town of Eli to court. And we had a court case with a
okay.
demolition order on our brand new, gorgeous home for 10 years. 10 years, we were in the Supreme Court, Peace Now, right over our heads. They wouldn't even talk to us. And we took the best lawyer at Tel Aviv, left wing, smart, great. And he said, you guys have a really good case. I'm going to win this for you. They're going to demolish your home and you're going to be very rich. And we said, thank you, but no thank you. We don't want to be rich. We want our home. This is our dream home and we want to stay and live in it. So we realized that there's nothing we can do in the court. But we did realize that the only reason that Peace Now was able to take us all to court is because they hadn't finalized, the state of Israel had not finalized the legalization process. And so we're still technically illegal, which could happen anywhere in Israel. And Eli, the entire town of Eli, hundreds of families had the exact same status. But Peace Now knew to take just a number of homes to court, and then maybe they demolish all those new homes. And that was part of their plan. So what I did is we decided to host Knesset members and ministers. And we said, look, because you have not finalized the legalization process, which means that there's a blue line committee and they have to conduct a survey and they have to, look at aerial photographs
all the
and
things.
declare Israeli state land. Our home is about to be demolished. Many, many, many breakfasts. I mean, Franny, I could write a book about during that time about every Knesset member, what they like to eat, who was on a diet, who likes ice cold Diet Coke, who is a vegan, because we'd host them in our home and we'd look them in the eye and we'd say, please help us. What ended up happening was there was a survey conducted. It was declared that all this area here is Israeli state land. One home was demolished. Another home was cut in half. They literally sawed down half the house, even though no one in the Arab village declared that, no one said that they have any kind of a certificate
Connection
or
to that land.
a connection. They didn't even want the land. So we were holier than the Pope. But that experience, the 2 different experiences of, moving to a new hilltop and nobody knows what you're doing and why you're living in a trailer when you're from a very prominent, beautiful neighborhood and your parents can buy you a house. Why? So that was the first question we had to answer. And second is, why are we here? Like, we're going to fight for our rights for this land. And so we learned so much. And that's when we realized that it's time to talk to people. So my method in diplomacy is, first of all, quiet diplomacy. That's what I believe in. And meeting people, sharing experiences with them. We host about 3,000 people a year in our home, but mostly people that don't share the same religious beliefs or political beliefs. Because I
Wow.
think that when you're on a trip, you know what you know more than anybody what those whirlwind trips are like, from morning to
Yes.
night and running and running
Yes.
and rushing. And when somebody in the middle of the day or even the end of the day, when it's freezing cold or burning hot, invites you into their home and they have a clean bathroom and a nice cup of coffee and some cute kids walking around giving you a chocolate bar or something, it's
Yeah.
nice. First of all, it's just nice.
It's
And
different.
and it's an
It's also
option.
so Jewish, Eliana. It's so Jewish. I'm like thinking of like Abraham is like, come on in, guys. Just we're gonna give you a cup of coffee. Some like, it's like come into the home. We're a very it's something that I think that most of the tourists and groups that I take, and I'm sure most of our listeners have either been to Israel, and if you haven't, you're learning. When you come to Israel, people open their homes to you. Like
Yeah,
it's part of who we are as a nation, I feel like. It's like kind of like
it
our
is.
heritage.
It is. And when I travel, I love going to visit people's homes and hearing about their lives. You want to know the most common question is when people come here, it doesn't matter what they believe and what they
Yeah.
expect, is where do you get your
Let's hear
groceries? That's what everybody asks.
it.
Isn't that funny?
Like,
Isn't
does
that funny?
Walt come up here?
Yeah, absolutely
Uber
not.
Eats, will they come to your
No,
house?
yeah. Do you drive? How far is the drive to the
Oh my
grocery
gosh.
store? It's a drive. It's a
Yeah.
drive.
That is honestly because we're all the same. We all want to go home, have dinner with our kids, go to work in the morning. And the end of the day,
Hmm.
these crazy, I mean, it's interesting. Actually, I want to ask you. So you meet like diplomats and political leaders and politicians and senators and just, the whole walk of life through your work. Is there when you take someone to the area of Binyamin for the first time, is there what tends to like challenge them or challenge their expectations? Like what moments do you see that kind of maybe tells a story there?
Many people have said to me, no, but this isn't the West Bank. What? This isn't the West Bank proper. You haven't taken us to the West Bank proper. I said, what's the West Bank proper? Very densely built, lots of rocks thrown, everybody fun. And I say, come out here and have a look. And then we drive through the region and you drive through this region.
Yeah.
There are a lot of empty mountains because only 20% of the entire Judea and Samaria is populated and built.
Yeah.
Everything else is open land. There's a lot of open land. And that is surprising because what you see on the news is very, very like narrowed into something
Yes.
specific.
Yes.
And they don't
I love that.
expect
It's honestly
beauty and tranquility and nice people. And it can't be because the settlers are killing Arabs for breakfast and they're grabbing their land. So that's the first thing that's very, very surprising.
so with you. I experienced that a lot with groups. They're like, this is the West Bank. I was imagining like the slums of like Harlem, but in Arabic and Hebrew. And I'm like, nope, not what it looks like. Not at all. So without naming names, what is like one reaction of a foreign diplomat, something that has stayed with you, like that of a visitor that you've taken on a tour or as a guest, some sort of story that stayed with you? Tell us something juicy.
Uh, I have to think about that one.
It's okay, you can think
Um,
about it.
no, I think that I've had very, very high ranking officials that have just been surprised. And then when I see them again in DC, they'll look at me and they'll say, I just can't forget the experience of meeting you and the governor and standing over here or standing over there. Shiloh has the most impact on the people. So if they're Republicans or evangelical Christians that are in Congress, I'm contacted on a weekly basis by members of Congress and by people in the State Department to pray for them. I'm asked to pray, to either go stand outside in my backyard or to go down to Shiloh and
Wow.
to pray, especially for specific, they get into specifics. So that's
You're like, please pray for my marriage. Pray for the Senate vote. Pray for
pray
Congress.
for. So
Pray for our
when
president.
when Mike Huckabee was appointed to be the ambassador, I had a connection with him because I had met him many times in Shiloh, and he used to bring groups to Psycho. So we had a connection. And when he had his appointment, but it wasn't ready yet. Israel Gantz, the governor, and I had met him in New York, and we said, when you come, we're going to pray for you in Shiloh. When you come to Israel as the ambassador, we're going to host you in Shiloh and have a beautiful prayer of thanksgiving. And he said, I want that so much. I can't wait to come to Jerusalem. And Shiloh is my favorite place in the world. And so we kept texting and writing. So what's happening? What's happening? He said, no, there's a Senate. There's the Senate hearing. And the Democrats were giving him a really hard time. It took a really long time for this appointment. We kept waiting. No, Mike Huckabee. And then I get this phone call one night. I'm folding laundry. It's 8:30 p.m. And they say, is this Eliana? Yes, we're calling from the State Department. You don't know us, but we know that you are probably waiting for Mike Huckabee, and we just wanted to let you know that the Senate hearing is going on right now. If you can turn it on, you can listen, and we'd appreciate if you could go to Shiloh and pray. I said, well, it's 8:30 at night, and I'm not going to go down to Shiloh, but I'll stand right here in my backyard where you can see it. I can see where Hannah prayed, and I will definitely pray for him. He loved that story when he came here. I shared it with him.
That's wild.
Real stories. And I'll tell you something, as a mother of 8, who's now traveling all the time, and a grandmother. My youngest is 11. I started working with a regional council when he was 7. And up until he was 7 years old, it was always with little kids, always nursing, always putting somebody in a car seat, taking them to kindergarten, picking them up, going to the park, baking cookies, you know what it's like. And all of a sudden I'm like, so I really didn't know what I was going to do with the next stage of my life. And I didn't know when that was going to be. And we were hosting so many people here from all over the world. And even during COVID, I would give virtual tours and people would send me prayers. I was stuck at home. So what else do I have to do? I got so many emails after every lecture that I gave on Zoom that one morning I'm sitting outside. I have 150 emails. And Stephen's looking for somebody to marry. And then there's this girl named Miriam. And I'm wait a minute, Stephen and Miriam, they should meet. And then I introduced them.
No.
Yes, seriously. And
people
they
who are please pray for us. And you're like, I'm gonna shit a few.
I was sitting here in COVID, and that's what I was doing. What else do I have to do? I was giving online tours at 4 a.m. because people were sitting home in their COVID. And they want to do it at 8 p.m. And so I got up for them. And that's what I did. That was my source of income during COVID. So anyways, when I'm trying to, as a mother and my whole, I just wanted to be home with my kids. And I'm asked many times by people who are not necessarily religious or believers, why do I have so many kids? And I say, it's not because of demography, if that's what you're thinking. And I said, I said, it's because I watched the Brady Bunch every day for years. It was my dream to have at least 6 kids. And then we decided on 2 more. But when it was time to think about the next step, and Israel Gantz said to me, I want you to come to Washington with me. And I had a dear friend named Ruthie who used to bring congressmen over to Shiloh, and I'd meet them. And
Ruthie Lieberman?
Ruthie Lieberman. And she is our political advisor, and said, okay, I'm taking you guys to Washington. And she said to me, she said, look, you're going to lead the meeting, and you'll introduce Israel, and you'll speak, then he'll speak, and then the meeting will be over, and you're going to have to leave on time. It's not like in Israel. You have a specific amount of time. Maybe they want to take a photo at the end. And I was really nervous because I didn't even know how to get to Washington. And Ruthie said, you'll be fine. Israel says, yeah. So I'm leading all these people, and I'm leading the way, and we're going into Washington. And the first member of Congress we walk into, I recognized the name, but I wasn't sure. And I was so nervous about just going on a trip alone and not.
Without your kids.
Right. And I walk in the room, and the member of Congress looks at me and says, how are you? I remember you from Shiloh. And I'm okay. And then the next one was a senator, and I remembered the senator, but I said, there's no way he remembers me. I walk in, he says, Eliana, my daughter Jordan is dying to come back to Shiloh. Her sister has been there. And I'm like, okay. And then the third member of Congress, he was late, but we're sitting in living room there. And I'm flipping through a photo album, and there's a photo of him and myself holding a tanaf in Shiloh. And I look up and I said,
Wow.
okay, God, I understand that this is what I'm supposed to be doing now.
Wow. You're like, oh, I feel at home. This is where I
Yeah,
need to be.
right.
I want to ask, what is your, when you think of like the future of the Binyamin area 20 years from now, what do you see it? How do you see it?
I see it as a part of the state of Israel, a full part of the state of Israel. I mean, I feel today, well, I
Sovereignty.
think the thing that's the most surprising to people is that we live normal lives and feel like we're part of the Israeli society and we pay taxes. People are surprised that we pay taxes and that we need building permits for our homes and that everything
Yes.
here, there's a city plan and there's a municipality. And so we live regular Israeli lives, but we know that we don't really live regular Israeli lives because the Israeli law
Yeah.
has not been fully applied here in this region. And then we have a big
Yep.
problem with lawlessness. And on the highway here, 70% of the
Crazy.
cars are Arab and they drive like crazy people. And there's there's no law enforcement. So 20 years from now, I see us living in peace because we will have to, by then, take a number of steps to end the terror, changing the reality of the school books in the Palestinian Authority to stop teaching terror and murder, take all the terror cells out of here, and to apply the Israeli law in Area C, at least, because we need to put an end to the lawlessness and build a beautiful future for everyone who wants to live here. Anyone who
Yeah.
wants to live here can, but they have to respect, first of all, the do not murder law, and second of all, respect the state of Israel who wants to build and develop and to have clean water and landfills instead of burning garbage and prosperous industrial zones and beautiful archaeological parks and national heritage sites. And I see a beautiful future for everyone here.
Amen. Well, I want to ask you before we get into rapid fire, last question for our listeners. They're like, we want to come. They're going to call up Judea Samaria Experience, be like, we want to come and see Binyamin. Give us like 3 places that they have to come see. Doesn't have to be archaeologically, meeting certain people, seeing certain views. Give us like your top 3.
Well, what I love about this region are the wineries. The terroir here, the conditions are perfect for very, very high quality wine. The high elevation, the hot days, the cold nights, the terracotta soil. But what I love about the winery, not because they're gold winning, winning gold medals in Paris, the settler wine, it's because of the effort that went in building these wineries, the stories behind. There are the garage wineries that are really cool and small, and there are the boutique wineries, and we even have much larger wineries like the Psagot winery with a beautiful wedding venue and an observation outlook over the Michmas Valley with a story of Saul and Jonathan, Shaul and Yonatan from the book of Samuel. And so my first suggestion would to go on a wine tour, would just go visit these wineries, taste these award-winning wines, eat
I
the
have to
beautiful
plug it.
croissants.
I have to plug it. We're doing a series on wineries, and many of them are from Binyamin. I'm so excited. They're amazing.
I would travel. I'd go to one of the springs here, just like to have a picnic and to meet the people and to see where the hangouts are.
There are a lot of springs.
And I love the Prat River. I love the hiking and Nathal
Yes.
Park. And if you're into biblical, like just reading a biblical verse while you're on a hike, then there's the prophecies of Jeremiah. When you read them, there's a lot of water. And you're thinking, what the heck?
Yeah.
Where do you have water? And you're walking in this desert, and it's an oasis. It's gorgeous with all this
Oh my
beautiful,
gosh.
clean water. And
Prat.
I think
Yes.
that the water and the hike, and you can do an easy hike or a difficult hike. You can go horseback riding in Nahal Prat. You can go ATVing, and that's one of my favorite places in Binyamin. And we have a new beautiful promenade, a boardwalk, like it's hanging in air. I don't know if you've
That
been there.
overlooks it.
Cards Lane.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're
Amazing.
just finishing it, and we're gonna have an opening soon. So
I'm coming.
that's and obviously, Shiloh is my favorite place. If I had to pick one place, I would bring people to where it all began. The whole
Amazing.
biblical story. But I love going to meet the people, hike, feel the nature, hear the stories, and so we have a lot to offer here in this region.
Okay. Amazing. So now we're going to move into a little bit of rapid fire questions. You have to answer them quickly and precisely. Are you ready? Let's do it. Okay. Sunrise hike or night under the stars in the hills?
Okay, that's not fair because I love both,
You have
but
to choose.
I really, really love sunrise hikes. I do that a lot.
Okay. If you could bring one biblical figure to hang out with you in Binyamin today, who would it be?
It would be Hannah, and Shiloh because I'd like to share the stories of all the people that are inspired by her prayer and all these miracles.
Wow. Okay. One Hebrew word that defines this region.
Madhim, amazing, beautiful, outstanding.
Madhim. Amazing.
Madhim.
Beautiful. There's not a good translation. Yeah. Madhim.
I
Everyone look it up.
know. It's like amazing
Okay.
and beautiful.
Okay. You have a coffee meeting. Would you prefer to sit with a journalist, foreign journalist, or a pastor?
Pastor.
A verse, a verse that feels especially connected to this land for you.
So this is a verse that I read all the time, and it's in the book of Judges, chapter 21, verse 19. Vayoma. It's like using ways of ancient times, tells you how to get to Shiloh. But what I love about it is and there was the festival of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, which is north of Beth El, east of the highway that goes from Beth El to Shechem, on the south of Libonah. The reason that I love it is because it talks about the highway, Highway
Yeah, it's like it
60.
has the highway.
It has the highway, the main artery of life in ancient times, the highway of the patriarchs, where Abraham would walk back and forth with his camel, and Jacob, and the story of Jacob's ladder, right there, Beit El. And Joseph, after he receives the coat of many colors, and he goes and his brothers throw him in the pit. It's all that's our main artery of life. That's my highway that I take on the way to work. And every single morning when I drive to work, when I drive back and forth here, no matter where I'm going, I have to drive on that highway. And I feel the presence of those biblical figures, and I feel the story, and it excites me. So every time I read this one pasuk, and I read it a lot because I'll be standing at an outlook and I'll be pointing to Shiloh. And so I read this all the
Yeah.
time, and I get excited by it, thinking, wow, I have the privilege to drive on the biblical highway.
Amazing. Eliana, this has been fascinating. Fascinating. It's so good to see you. I'm so happy that you were able to come onto our podcast. I invite everyone to come travel around Binyamin. And it really is an outstanding area of the country. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Franny, and thank you for bringing so many wonderful people to the area and inspiring them with your love and for your love for the land and your enthusiasm.
Okay, so let's go back to our question. What changes people more, arguments or encounters? If you listen to Eliana's story, you'll notice something striking. She doesn't describe changing minds through debates or like going on Piers Morgan or arguments. She doesn't describe having millions of followers or viral videos on TikTok or on Instagram. She doesn't even describe like fiery speeches. What she really describes and talks about is coffee, bathrooms, her kids handing out chocolates. She describes these encounters that she's having. And in the Tanakh, this is not a small thing at all. This is really where real shifts actually happen. So I want to kind of step back and start at the beginning. If we're talking about the area of Binyamin, there's literally so much to unpack here. We're going to see how much we can get in. We might also do some other things about Binyamin in different episodes. But I want to start because I think that the blessings that Moshe gives to the tribes, that holds a lot of depth. So I want to go into Deuteronomy, Dvarim, chapter Lamed Gimel 33, passage 12, where Benjamin is blessed. And this is what it says. And of Binyamin, he said, beloved of Hashem, may he dwell in the safety with him. He protects him all day long, and he rests between his shoulders. Interesting. By the way, the word yedid, which is like a friend, which I think is really beautiful. It's like not combatant. It's very connective. He's beloved. And I think that's really gorgeous. But there's a really interesting part of this is the words, the term dwell between his shoulders is very strange. What is that actually referring to? So the Midrash, this is thousands of year old commentary. The Sifri says that this term is referring to the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, which will rest in the lot of Binyamin, in his territory. Where the temple actually resides is in the territory of Binyamin. And resting between his shoulders, anyone who has seen the Temple Mount, anyone who has been at a lookout of Jerusalem, you notice that that area is kind of lower and it's rested. It's like nestled between the mountains. Those are like the shoulders. And it's almost like, I don't know, nestled between these ridges, like it's being held, like it's something very precious. But actually, there's a deeper layer here. When we think about our shoulders, we're not thinking about our automatic attack mode, like our arms, those are for fighting, our legs even. When we think about our shoulders, we're thinking about carrying weight. Or maybe just, we think about carrying. Binyamin is the tribe that carries presence, not only God's presence, but if you think about it, what do we carry on our shoulders? We carry responsibility. We carry weight. We carry sacred things. Sometimes we have overdues. We carry some, trauma or heavy or stress. We don't want that. It's interesting because when we think about the tribe of Binyamin in this area that Eliana represents, the tribe of Binyamin is not the loudest tribe. It's not like the leader tribe. It's actually the smallest. It's the youngest. Binyamin is the youngest of all the 12 tribes. And he's also described as one that holds the Shekhinah. Now, I will say that anytime we talk about Binyamin in the Tanakh, and there are fascinating stories, he's the tribe that really connects to all the other brothers. In fact, when we think about the story of Joseph, the sale of Joseph, and Joseph goes down to Egypt, he becomes the second most important man in all of Egypt and literally saves the entire world from famine. And when his brothers come down, that battle between Yehuda and Yosef, or the tribes of Rachel, right, Binyamin and Yosef versus the rest of the tribes, that whole brotherly war, really the tribe that unites them again is Binyamin. Binyamin is the youngest brother. It's just how it is. And it's interesting because on the actual plot, like it's kind of this border town. Now I want to go to another idea in Tanakh that kind of connects to this question that we ask. And that is a term that's also used not too often, but it's very, very deep. And the term is panim el panim, face to face. Where do we have that term? The first time we see this term, face to face, it's in Genesis 30. And Yaakov named the place Peniel, for I've seen God face to face, and yet my life has been spared. This is exactly after Jacob, is wrestling with this angel. This is the most transformative time in his life. He's going to actually receive the name Yisrael, Israel, which is going to be super transformative. We really like that because we're all part of Israel. But this idea of seeing face to face, that is how things are transformed. It's a face-to-face encounter. It's not speeches. It's not press releases or loud arguments. It's this experience that we have face-to-face. Another thing is like this closeness of face-to-face. Another really cool time that we see this term about facing each other or face-to-face. It's not exactly panim el panim, it's similar, right? And it's actually interesting. It's in Proverbs 27, passage 19. Mishle, kemaim apanim lepanim ken lev adam laadam. As water reflects the face shown to it, so does one man's heart reciprocate on others. When you see something face to face, how you act towards that thing, what you put out, the same way that if you were looking at water, if you were looking at, your face in a reflection, whatever face you make to that reflection is what's being reflected back to you. So to the heart of man to man, how I come to someone else, how I act with someone else, how I encounter someone else, that's what's reciprocated. And if we think about Eliana's story for a second, I think this is really what she actually does. She takes these abstract ideas, the West Bank, settlers, conflict, and she turns it into a face, a home, a kitchen table, a conversation. And that's something that is deeply Jewish. Because Torah is really built on encounter. That's really what it is in the end. In fact, another place that it says the word face-to-face in the Tanakh is actually at Sinai, when we literally have the revelation of God and we speak to God face-to-face. it's described not as like this philosophical encounter with God, but rather a meeting, a presence, a face-to-face. The idea of build me a tabernacle, build me an altar, build me a mishkan, and I will dwell in you. It's about presence. It's about the encounter. It's about being one-on-one. It's not about the external. It's about feeling it. It says that I will dwell in you. It doesn't say that God dwells above us. It's not a headline. It's not something, it's among them. I'm going to dwell among them. And here's another little place where Binyamin becomes very fascinating. It's actually something interesting that the Talmud, which is also written thousands of years ago, and it's kind of this back and forth on the Torah. It talks about the korbanot, the offerings that were given in Shiloh. And when it talks about the offerings, the sacrifices that were done in Shiloh, which is right next to where Eliana lives, it says that you can eat it, you can eat the sacrifice in any place that you can see the tabernacle. You don't have to actually be inside the Mishkan. Bechol haroeh, anywhere that you can see. Sight matters, visibility matters, that contact of seeing something eye to eye. That's where that connection happens. I think that so much of the global narrative about Yehuda Shomron actually happens without sight, without actually walking the hills, without seeing the open mountains that Eliana described, like where she lives and her view. It's without sitting in a living room on a hilltop outside of the Mishkan. It's really that global space. I feel like that global space is like crazy, fire and earthquakes and shattering debates and conflict. And yet, if we look at the prophet Elijah, who runs away from God and from his purpose, quite literally, he runs away to the desert and he's like, I'm done with the people. In Kings 1, Melachim Aleph 19, there's this whole encounter that Eliyahu has with God. He's run away. He already finished the whole crazy story that happened on the Carmel Mountains, and the people still are worshiping idols. So he runs away. He's like, I'm done with this situation. And this is what it literally says. I'm reading it in English because it's kind of long. Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, he said, for the Lord is about to pass by. He's about to literally encounter God. And a great powerful wind split the mountains and shattered the rocks. The Lord is not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord is not in an earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire, but the Lord is not in fire. And after the fire, the faint sound of silence. And when Elijah heard this, he wrapped his face in his cloak and he went out and stood by the entrance of the cave and he says, I've seen God. Like all of these fiery things, the fire, the earthquake, the wind. I feel like that's how people see and talk about Yehuda Shomron without actually coming and seeing it. And like God says, it's not in those things. It's in a meeting place. It's in a presence. It's in seeing it. And that's what Eliana practices. She calls it quiet diplomacy. It's not weakness. It's precision. It's being, I guess, in the space where you can meet someone. When someone walks into your home and sees your kid's shoes next to the door, and they realize you sit here, you pay taxes, you've been living here, you drive carpools, you have to do your laundry, do your dishes, you worry about your kids like everyone else, the caricature that they've built for you cracks. Not because you've defeated it on Piers Morgan, because it just dissipates when you actually see it face to face. It dissolves. Interestingly enough, I'll say that it also has to do a lot with unity. There's a story of, I think that the stories of Binyamin, and there's some really, really amazing ones in the Tanakh, it's always going to be either the time that unifies or the time that creates disunity. Like whatever happens with the tribe of Benjamin, of Binyamin in the Tanakh, it's kind of a reflection of our unity in the people, of this coming together. Eliana was talking about the passage that she loves the most, which is like the direct highway to Shiloh, which goes through all of Binyamin. And I would say that that Binyamin is really this place of connection, like a highway that connects one place to the next. And specifically her story that's connected between the hilltops and Capitol Hill, between her caravan and Congress, between ancient pottery shards that she found at her house and hearings and quiet diplomacy. So what changes people more? Argument and debate or encounter? I would say the Tanakh says it's pretty clear that the way that you can transform is through encounters, that covenants are built through encounters. that being present with someone is way stronger than persuasion. And maybe that's the quiet spiritual energy of Binyamin. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's deeply rooted, it's carrying a weight on its shoulders. It's a tribe that hosts the presence of God. And it's a region that kind of functions like a bridge. And maybe that's why Eliana's story starts with something so small. So small as a painted turquoise door. Because before you can argue for a place, before you can defend it, before you can legislate it, it actually starts by just living it, by encountering it, by creating a space for encounter, by painting a door, by setting a table, by inviting someone into your home. Essentially, you have to live in it. And maybe the future of this region 20 years from now is all going to be shaped by these encounters, not by crazy out there, arguments and debates, but just by people face to face, holding each other, carrying that weight, making those connections, just the quiet stuff. Because if we're talking about Elijah, the wind makes a lot of noise, earthquakes shakes things up, fire burns things down. But that quiet interaction is something that really can last and shape things over a long period of time. Real history, maybe, just maybe, starts with turquoise doors. Guys, thanks for coming. I'll see y'all next week. If this episode helped you better appreciate Judea and Samaria, you can take it to the next level with the Judea and Samaria experience. They can help you plan meaningful visits to this region, off the beaten sites, tour guides, connect you to local personalities. And guess what? This referral service is completely free, thanks to our generous sponsors, Texans for a Safe Israel. Check them out at their website, judeasamariaexperience.com. That's Judea without an H, samariaexperience.com. You won't regret it.